Hey, what is the Whiteboard Challenge and how can you use one to impress a potential employer? In this snippet from a recent CareerFoundry Live event, Elizé Todd, a seasoned UX designer and Adobe certified instructor, is going to take you through everything you need to know about running and undertaking a Whiteboard Challenge. Before we dive into the content, if you're interested in events and talks like this, you can check out the range of CareerFoundry events and webinars in the description below. If you want to get access to weekly UX and UI design content, subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to get notified when we release new videos on these topics. Also, if you have any comments about anything you watch regarding the Whiteboard Challenge or this webinar event, please let us know in the comments of the video and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Let's get started and dive straight into the webinar.
So what is a whiteboard challenge? Well, yes, it involves a whiteboard. So if you are in person, you as the interviewee is going to have the whiteboard, some markers. That's going to be your tool. If it's digital, you might have a digital whiteboard or something like that, like Mural or Miro.com. So those are some options. And what the interviewer is going to do is they're going to give you a prompt with a design challenge. And then you are going to show your process in solving that design challenge on the whiteboard. And then there will either be just one interviewer watching and observing and evaluating and potentially collaborating, or sometimes it's a team. So let's talk about the UX interview process and where the white challenge fits in. This is typical of what a UX process or UX interview process looks like. First, you might have a phone screening with maybe a recruiter or someone from HR. Then you might have an on-site or a phone interview. Well, they might ask you some questions about yourself, your background, your experience working with engineers, etc. And then you'll have the portfolio presentation. This is the first part where you're like, I'm nervous, where you're gonna show your presentation of all the work you've done. You might dive a bit deep into one or two projects. It might be a 30-minute to 40-minute presentation. And then from there, you're gonna do a design exercise. Now, this is one of typically two things: the whiteboard challenge exercise or a take-home challenge exercise. And it's just like what it sounds like. You get a design prompt, but you get to work at home and then you'll present it later. This exercise sometimes does require designers will work on it. It'll say like 5 to 8 hours. I hear designers who work 20, 30 hours on some of these design exercises. So there's pros and cons to doing the whiteboard versus the take-home challenge, right? Whiteboard is more on the spot, but it's done in an hour. With the take-home exercise, it might be a long, lengthy experience, right? And then there's some other things you might do: an app critique. You might do a second, more informal interview. And this is actually, I just interviewed with Facebook. I did exactly every single one of these steps. So this is really what it looks like. I like to study what the big companies are doing because it has a trickle-down effect into all the other smaller agencies and companies and what they do for their hiring process. So good to be aware of what that experience is like. How do we do it? One is to have some sort of framework for yourself, some process that you can apply and it can adapt to just about any design challenge that's thrown your way. Okay, and what you're going to notice here is that it's very similar to the design thinking process, except this has to be done in an hour. So we don't have time for user testing and building out prototypes and all of that, right? So it's a very lean, quick version. And this is the framework I use that I'm sharing with you guys, so you can use it, adapt it, change it, manipulate it for what works best for you. But this is the framework we're going to work off of today. So number one, understanding the problem. Right? What is the problem we're trying to solve? That's what we always try to start with. Defining the problem, generating ideas, so ideation, fleshing out a solution, and then we're going to summarize and reflect on this process. So here is the design challenge prompt. Imagine that the interviewer gave you this prompt. So they want to win back scooter commuters. What do we do first? We want to understand deeper into the problem. So imagine this is our whiteboard. On the left-hand side, we're going to spend about 10 minutes in this first part. Understanding the problem is really gathering context. This is where we're going to be asking a lot of follow-up questions to that design prompt. We don't typically just get started and boom, boom, here we go with the solutions. This is where we're actually going to probably have the most involvement with the interviewer. I will say, sometimes an interviewer will say, pretend I'm a stakeholder, you're just asking me questions from my business and that's it. Sometimes they'll say, let's pretend like we're a team and you're collaborating with me as a designer or a product manager, etc. What we're going to do is ask our stakeholder a lot of follow-up questions. We're wanting to understand further the business objectives, user objectives, any constraints that we have, that could be technical or any other constraints that we need to consider, as well as success metrics. How will we measure success? These are things that we're gonna try to clarify in this first 10 minutes. Now we time block it because sometimes you can get lost in solutions and lost in questions, and then at the end you don't actually have any final solution that you can share. So this is a big problem. We need to make sure we're cognizant of our time. Now what we're gonna do is look at the problem space, and this is where we're gonna spend another 10 minutes. So we're diving deeper into understanding the problem. We got some context. We want to explore problems even more. UX designers love getting into those problems. So we want to explore business and user problems, as well as more of the user needs use cases. So now we have an understanding of the problem. But now, as you guys can see, we have so many problems, right? And so that's where we want to define the problem and figure out how to narrow down our options to the critical few that are going to have the most impact. Now we're ready for the fun part, generating ideas. I can already tell you guys are going to be good at this. So generating ideas. This is our whiteboard. On the upper right-hand side is our solution space. This is where we're going to think about all the different solutions for this problem. This whole area for solutions should take us about 25 minutes, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, okay? And just to clarify, this is a 1 hour long whiteboard challenge we would be doing, and that's pretty typical, okay? 1 hour long. So one of the ways that I like to think about ideation and creating different ways to solve problems is to use the how might we questions. So this is a framework that was pioneered by IDEO. They are one of the biggest design agencies in the world. And they created this to unlock innovation, because we can come up with solutions, right? We would see those needs, we'd see those problems, and we'd probably come up with a list of, 5 to 7 good solutions. But in order to unlock more creativity, more innovation, we need to use different exercises to take us that next step forward, to really unleash something within ourselves. And this is one way that I highly recommend for designers to use, is to think a little bit more creatively during the whiteboard challenge with this exercise. So this question helps us to turn challenges into opportunities and address the problem in many different ways. So let's go into this. Let's see what that could look like. Okay, let's go into this example of pretending that, we want to improve the air travel experience. So let's say we're improving air travel. We would use this how might we in these different ways. So I'm going to show you how the different ways that you can use the how might we. Number one, you can use the how might we to explore the opposite. So for example, how might we make the wait at the airport the most exciting part of the trip? That's exploring the opposite, right? Because usually the wait is so it's so tiring. But how can we make it the most exciting? So you're seeing we're framing a question. We're not creating a solution yet. These are the how might we questions. Next step is solutions, okay? So how might we to create this question that can potentially start to unlock some more creative solutions? We can question an assumption. So how might we entirely remove the wait time at the airport? Whoa. It's an assumption that we have to wait at the airport. What if we questioned that assumption? You can go after adjectives. So how might we make the rush refreshing instead of difficult, right? So how can we make it refreshing, this whole experience? Another one is create an analogy from a need or a want. So how can we make the airport like a spa or like a playground? That can be, you can kind of really unlock some more fun ideas there. And then also, how can we break the point of view into pieces? So how might we soothe delayed passengers? So we're breaking down the point of view to just that group of people who are delayed, right? Because that's such a big problem and pain point people have at the airport. So this is how you can start to use how might we. So now we have so many solutions, right? And we want to flesh out a solution. So down here at the bottom right corner here, this is where we're going to focus on one solution in depth. So you're going to pick a solution and you're going to talk about why you've selected that solution, right? So from here, I want to show the flows, some of the key screens. So I'm going to start to get sketching. Here's my sketches. Now, so you can tell sketches do not have to be pretty, especially when you're in a time crunch. But what's important is that you're able to really explain it as you go through it. And so the interviewer understands your progression and your thought process. Now, the final aspect of this is to summarize and reflect. What does that mean? Well, what you want to do at the very end is to take 5 minutes to summarize your whole from A to Z, the business objective, how you, the problem that you decided to solve, the solutions you came up with, why you decided to move forward with it, and then a little rough idea of kind of the key screens that you created. So you're just summarizing your story. And you're also taking time to reflect and talk about, okay, these are some areas that maybe I should have improved upon, or some of the areas that I'm feeling like it's not really fleshed out, it's not a great idea yet. You can definitely, it's encouraged to talk about it at this point, right? So you can talk about the different things that you're like, I went forward with this, but I'm really not sure. It's not maybe the best idea. That's okay. This is not about perfection. Okay. Why do we care about this? Because self-awareness is one of the most important skills for a UX designer. Yes, like Gary Busey. Okay. This is one of the most sought after skills. And I've talked to many hiring managers, and this is one of the #1 things is people to be aware that not everything I do is perfect. I'm aware that some of these solutions isn't completely thought through, and that's okay, right? And it also kind of can give us like a little bit of a breather to be like, okay, we don't have to be perfect. Oh, that feels good, right? So it gives us a little bit of that relief as well.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this webinar footage about the Whiteboard Challenge useful, insightful, and helpful for you on your UX and UI design journey. As I mentioned at the start of the video, if you're interested in events and talks like this, we have weekly events taking place over on the CareerFoundry website. Most of the webinars are free and jam-packed full of value with really interesting and diverse speakers from across the industry. You can find the link to the events in the description below. Also, we have weekly content coming out like this on our YouTube channel, so subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.